The beer mug exploded against the wooden floor with a violent crack that cut through Murphy's Roadhouse like a gunshot. For one suspended heartbeat, the bar went utterly silent, forks frozen halfway to mouths, laughter choked off, chairs creaking as they stopped mid-swing. Then came the voice. "You think you're something special?" Viper Jackson's words carried like a blade through the quiet. His massive paw was wrapped around the collar of a small woman wiping tables, dragging her close. The snake tattoo curling up his thick neck seemed to writhe under the amber lights, and his whiskey-soaked breath hung between them like poison. "I asked you a simple question, sweetheart. This bar pays protection," he grinned, flicking the silver lighter in his other hand open and shut, like a sinister metronome. "Or this bar burns. Which one's it gonna be?" Elena Rodriguez didn't answer. She kept her dark brown eyes on the scuffed floorboards, her body language screaming submission. Around her, 10 members of the Desert Vipers Motorcycle Club rose from their seats, spreading out in a predatory circle that trapped her inside. She was barely 5'4" in worn sneakers. Her white server's shirt hung loose on her slight frame, her dark hair tied back in a simple ponytail that made her look younger than her 35 years. Everything about her whispered ordinary, forgettable, weak. And yet, 15 minutes from now, Viper Jackson would be on his knees, begging for mercy. Before we dive deeper into that transformation, pause and think. Have you ever completely misjudged someone? Maybe you assumed they were soft, fragile, incapable, only to discover they carried a strength that outmatched your imagination. Drop your own stories in the comments, because I read every one. They remind us that the deadliest mistake is underestimating the wrong person. Now, back to Murphy's. The tension had been simmering long before the glass shattered. The Desert Vipers rolled in just after 8, their Harleys thundering like artillery across the parking lot. Every patron tensed as the engines cut, because everyone knew what came next. This wasn't their first stop along the highway near Camp Pendleton. Their reputation was a storm cloud that always broke in fire. 3 bars had already burned in the past month. Each blaze labeled an accident, faulty wiring, gas leaks, but everyone knew better. 2 owners had limped away from hospital beds swearing they'd fallen downstairs or slipped on oil, their faces purpled with bruises. Elena had watched them swagger inside while she quietly folded napkins at the service station. Her movements were precise, economical. Jake, the 25-year-old bartender, had gone pale the second he saw the skull patches stitched on their leather vests. "That's them," he whispered to Elena, his voice shaking. "The Desert Vipers. They're the ones who torched Rossetti's place in Oceanside." She only nodded, folding another napkin into a perfect triangle. Jake had noticed this about her over the 6 months she'd worked at Murphy's. Everything Elena did carried an almost military precision. She wiped down tables in flawless grid patterns. She arranged condiments with geometric neatness. And she never ever had her back to the door for more than a few seconds. Then came Viper Jackson himself. All 6'3" of him strode in like a conquering king, arms spread wide as if the place belonged to him already. The snake tattoo that gave him his name slithered from his jaw down into his vest, and the gleam of his shaved head caught the low light. His 9 companions fanned out behind him in a tactically sound dispersal pattern, covering exits, securing sightlines, establishing dominance with practiced ease. "Evening, folks," Viper announced, his voice carrying that brand of false friendliness that always preceded blood. "Don't mind us, we're just here for a drink and a little business talk." The dozen or so regulars shifted uneasily. Most were veterans from the nearby Marine base, men who'd seen their share of violence but knew this wasn't their fight. At the corner booth, Sheriff Tom Bradley, grizzled, 55, 2 tours in Iraq before he'd come home to wear a badge, set down his coffee slowly. His weathered hand hovered near his hip, where his service pistol would have been if he'd been on duty. Elena had approached the biker's table with her order pad, voice soft, eyes lowered. "What can I get you, gentlemen?" That's when the first spark hit. A wiry biker with meth-rotted teeth slapped her backside as she passed. "Start with a smile, sweetheart. You look like somebody died." Elena moved fluidly, stepping out of reach, never acknowledging him. She just kept taking orders, pen scratching calmly. Jake had bristled behind the bar, his fists tightening. He looked ready to leap out, but Elena caught his eyes and gave a tiny shake of her head. "Stand down." They ordered beer. Pitchers of it. Elena served them swiftly, silently. And that's when she felt the weight of Viper's gaze settle on her like a hand around her throat. She was wiping down a table when he called out, "Hey, server girl, where's Murphy? We need to discuss business." "Mr. Murphy's in Phoenix for the week," she answered softly. "I'm just covering shifts." "Well then," Viper grinned, standing tall enough to blot out the light above her. "I guess you'll have to relay a message. Tell Murphy the Desert Vipers are offering protection. $5,000 a month, and nothing bad happens here." Elena's rag moved over the spotless table. "I'll let him know you stopped by." The grin vanished. His voice turned gravelly, dangerous. "I don't think you understand, sweetheart. This isn't optional. Every bar from here to San Diego is under our protection. Those who refuse," he flicked his lighter, steel clicking in rhythm. "Well, accidents happen. Electrical fires. Gas leaks. Real tragic stuff." "I understand," Elena said, still soft, still calm. "But I can't make decisions for Mr. Murphy. I just serve drinks and clean tables." That was when the encirclement closed in. The bikers shifted unconsciously into formation around her. It had a name in military tactics: envelopment. But there were gaps, flaws invisible to anyone without training. The one by the jukebox leaned too heavily on his bad knee. She'd caught his limp when he entered. Two near the pool table were so focused on posturing they failed to track Sheriff Bradley's slow shift into a better defensive angle. And Viper himself? He stood far too close, inside her reactionary gap. A fatal mistake, if you knew what to do. Elena's fingers brushed the small piece of metal beneath her shirt, hidden on a thin chain. The worn dog tag was warm against her skin, a relic of the woman she had been. A reminder of the soldier she was trying not to be anymore. To the room, she looked like a terrified waitress cornered by wolves. But her mind was already calculating ranges, angles, vulnerabilities. Every movement of the bikers was filed away with cold efficiency. Viper Jackson thought he was the predator. In 15 minutes, the truth would be carved into his bones. Because Elena Rodriguez wasn't ordinary. She wasn't weak. She was a warrior who'd buried that part of herself deep, until now. And Murphy's Roadhouse was about to become her battlefield. The mug shattered like a gunshot. A spray of beer and glass fragments burst across the scuffed wooden floor of Murphy's Roadhouse, and the sound slammed the room into silence. The jukebox cut off mid-song, conversation strangled in throats, dice froze in mid-roll. And then, into that vacuum, came a voice. "You think you're something special?" Viper Jackson's growl cut through the quiet like a serrated blade. He had a fist the size of a ham clamped around Elena Rodriguez's collar, yanking her off balance. Whiskey fumes and menace wafted from his mouth. The snake tattoo coiling up his thick neck writhed with every twitch of muscle, giving him a reptilian air that seemed far too fitting. "I asked you a simple question, sweetheart. This bar pays protection." He flicked his lighter open and closed with a metallic snap, the tiny flame winking in rhythm. "Or this bar burns. Which one's it gonna be?" Elena didn't look at him. Her dark eyes stayed fixed on the beer-slick floorboards, her body language whispering surrender. 10 men in leather vests rose from their chairs behind Viper, spreading into a ring around her. The Desert Vipers had perfected this predatory formation: encirclement, intimidation, inevitability. She was 5'4" in worn sneakers, her white server's shirt too big for a frame, dark hair yanked into a practical ponytail that made her look almost girlish. On the surface, she was forgettable. Ordinary. Weak. But 15 minutes from this moment, Viper Jackson would be kneeling on those same floorboards, his pride shattered, begging for a mercy he hadn't earned. The tension had been building long before the mug exploded. Just after 8, the Vipers had rolled into the gravel lot, their Harley engines rumbling like artillery. Everyone inside the Roadhouse knew what that meant. Murphy's wasn't their first target. Their reputation had arrived ahead of them like thunder before lightning. 3 bars along the highway had burned down in the last month. The flames always blamed on faulty wiring or gas leaks. 2 owners had crawled out of hospital beds claiming clumsy accidents, their broken jaws saying otherwise. Elena hadn't flinched when she heard the engines. She'd simply kept folding napkins at the service station, each crease exact, each triangle identical. Jake, the young bartender with a fresh marine haircut that hadn't grown out yet, had gone pale. "That's them," he whispered, voice cracking. "The Desert Vipers. They're the ones who torched Rossetti's place." She nodded, silent, folding another napkin with military precision. Jake had noticed it before, the way Elena worked. Everything she did was efficient, exact, almost ritualistic. The way she cleaned tables in perfect grids. The way she arranged ketchup bottles and salt shakers with geometric neatness. The way she never left her back exposed to the door. Then came Viper Jackson himself. 6'3", swaggering through the entrance like a conquering warlord. His shaved head gleamed in the amber light. The snake tattoo slithered from his jaw into his vest. 9 men fanned out behind him in a tactical spread, covering sightlines, blocking exits, establishing dominance without a word. "Evening, folks." His voice carried false friendliness laced with threat. "Don't mind us, we're just here for a little business." The dozen or so patrons shifted uneasily. Most were veterans or blue-collar regulars. Sheriff Tom Bradley, grizzled at 55, 2 tours in Iraq etched into his posture, set his coffee cup down in the corner booth. His weathered hand moved near his hip, reflexively reaching for the weapon he wasn't wearing off duty. Elena had walked to the table with her order pad, eyes down. "What can I get you, gentlemen?" That's when the first crackle of violence sparked. A wiry biker with meth-rotted teeth slapped her backside as she passed. "How about a smile, sweetheart? You look like a funeral." She didn't react. Just shifted out of reach with practiced fluidity, as if the move had been accidental. She kept taking orders, calm, quiet. Jake had stiffened, rage coloring his young face. He started forward, fists clenched, but Elena caught his eyes and gave the faintest shake of her head. "Don't." The men ordered beer. Lots of it. Elena delivered pitchers without complaint. But she felt it then, Viper's eyes on her, heavy as a chain. She wiped down a table when his voice cut across the bar. "Hey, server girl, where's Murphy? We've got business." "Mr. Murphy's out of town," she replied evenly. "I'm just covering shifts." "Well then." Viper stood, casting her in shadow. "You'll have to pass along a message. $5,000 a month buys Murphy peace. No accidents, no fires. He doesn't pay, things get tragic." He snapped his lighter again, tiny flame licking the air. "I'll let him know," Elena said softly, cloth moving over spotless wood. The false friendliness vanished. "You don't get it, sweetheart. This ain't optional." Around her, the bikers shifted, their encirclement tightening. But to Elena's eyes, trained, calculating, she saw the flaws. The man by the jukebox leaned too hard on a bad knee. The 2 near the pool table were posturing, not watching. Viper himself stood too close, inside her reactionary gap. Her fingers brushed the worn dog tag on the chain beneath her shirt, warm against her skin. A relic of the woman she had been. A warrior she was trying not to be anymore. 3 tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. 15 confirmed kills. 4 bronze stars. A purple heart. All of it boxed away in a storage unit, sealed with her dress blues and gunnery sergeant chevrons. She had come to Murphy's for quiet. To be invisible. To serve beers to people who didn't know the weight of blood. But trouble had a way of finding Marines, even retired ones. Elena checked the tactical smartphone in her pocket, a rugged, military-grade device with encrypted comms and satellite uplink. She had contacts she could call, people who'd understand, respond. But she'd sworn never to use those lines again. She slid the phone back silently. Viper's patience was thinning. "Look," he growled, "I'm trying to be nice. Convince Murphy to see sense, and maybe I throw you a bonus. What do you make here? Tips and scraps? I could take care of you." "Thank you," Elena said calmly, finally meeting his gaze. "But I'm fine with my arrangement." Something in her serenity infuriated him. He clamped his meaty hand around her arm, squeezing until bruises bloomed. "I'm going to have to ask you to take your hand off the lady." Sheriff Bradley's voice carried authority sharp as steel. He had stood, posture unmistakable, a soldier's bearing never fades. Viper laughed without releasing her. "And what are you gonna do, old man? You're off duty. Outnumbered 10-1. Sit down before you get hurt." But Bradley didn't back down. And Elena noticed 5 other patrons shifting, their unit pins and tattoos marking them as military. The air thickened, violence coiling like a spring. "Tom, it's okay," Elena said softly. "These gentlemen were just leaving." That's when Viper made his mistake. He yanked her closer, his other hand grabbing for her collar. "You don't tell us when we leave. We leave when we want. And right now, I think it's time we taught this whole place a little respect." Chairs scraped as patrons rose. Jake gripped the baseball bat behind the bar. The Vipers sneered, ready to swing. But Viper's attention tunneled onto Elena. "You know what your problem is," he snarled, face inches from hers. "You think you're better than us. Maybe I need to remind you of your place." His fist tore at her shirt. Fabric ripped down the middle with brutal finality. Elena stumbled back, white cotton hanging in tatters, revealing the black tank top beneath. And with it, the truth. The jukebox paused between tracks. The universe itself seemed to hold its breath. Across Elena's back, inked in intricate detail, stretched the eagle, globe, and anchor of the United States Marine Corps. Beneath it, bold words, "First Force Recon." Gasps rippled. The veterans in the room knew exactly what that meant. Beneath the emblem, in sharp black letters, Gunny E. Rodriguez, 0311. Infantry. The tip of the spear. Scars framed the tattoo, bullet wounds, shrapnel trails, knife lines carved by war. Her body was a map of battles survived. Viper froze, his hand slack on torn fabric, his swagger draining as recognition hit. "Force Recon," Sheriff Bradley whispered. Holy hell! The shift in Elena's bearing was subtle but seismic. Shoulders squared. Chin lifted. Civilian melted into Marine. "Mr. Jackson," she said evenly, using his real name. "I believe you owe me an apology for destroying my property." His face flickered, confusion, fear, realization. His grip fell away, the ruined shirt dropping like a surrender flag. "How do you know my name?" His voice cracked with uncertainty. Elena turned slowly, giving the room a full view of her scars and ink. Phones lifted, recording history. "Stephen Jackson," she said. "Dishonorably discharged for stealing and selling military equipment. Founded the Desert Vipers 3 years ago. Wanted for questioning in 4 arsons, 2 aggravated assaults. I make it my business to know who's threatening establishments in my area of operations." The words hit him like bullets. From the corner, a grizzled man in his 60s stood. Elena had served him coffee every Tuesday, never knowing he was Colonel Mike Harrison, Medal of Honor recipient. "Gunny Rodriguez," he said, voice snapping like command. "First Force Recon. I remember you. Fallujah. Phantom Fury. 2004. Her stance shifted instinctively, acknowledging a superior. "Sir, you're the one who held the schoolhouse with a broken rifle and 3 mags until the evac birds came. Lance Corporal Williams and PFC Chen were with me. They didn't make it." Another patron rose. Maria Santos, florist, now trembling. "Camp Leatherneck. I remember when they brought you in. Burns, bullets, shrapnel. They said you'd never walk again." "Doctors can be wrong," Elena said simply. The Vipers had started edging backward, but their path was blocked. 5 men had shifted into place, combat veterans, their eyes steady, arms folded. "Leaving so soon?" one asked, sergeant stripes tattooed on his forearm. "But you haven't apologized yet." Viper's face went crimson, humiliation and fear battling pride. "We didn't know." "Didn't know what?" Elena stepped forward. Despite being a foot shorter, Viper stepped back. "That I bled for this country? That I earned the right to basic dignity? Or just that I can break you in ways you can't even imagine?" The roadhouse was silent, thick with awe and fear. Elena's hand drifted unconsciously toward her lower back, where a compact sidearm rested under the waistband of her jeans. Viper Jackson finally realized the truth. He wasn't the predator here. He was the prey. The medical kit hidden beneath Elena Rodriguez's server's apron wasn't the cheap kind you found behind most bars. It wasn't a plastic box with band-aids, gauze, and antiseptic wipes. No, Elena carried a compact, professional-grade trauma pack outfitted with military hemostatic agents, clotting powders, tourniquets, and combat medications designed for battlefield emergencies. She had packed it herself the way she had for years in Iraq and Afghanistan. Advanced clotting compounds and pain management injectors had saved lives in the dust-choked streets of Fallujah, in the hellfire chaos of Ramadi, in nameless villages most Americans would never hear about. They had saved her squad mates. They had saved children. They had even saved her. And though she now spent her nights pouring beers and wiping tables, Elena still carried those tools. Out of habit, out of training, out of the unshakable truth Marines never stop preparing for the worst. A Marine is always ready, she told herself, even when her battlefield had become a roadside bar off the highway near Camp Pendleton. The weight of that kit was reassuring, though she prayed she'd never need to use it again. All of the above, Viper Jackson admitted finally, his voice so small it barely reached the room. A man who had swaggered in like a tyrant was now reduced to a trembling figure, his massive shoulders hunched as if trying to shrink. Sheriff Bradley, who had inched closer through the whole confrontation, placed a steady hand on the phone at his belt. His other hand hung loose but near his hip, the stance of a man who had trained himself to be ready without appearing threatening. "Ms. Rodriguez," Bradley said, his tone low but carrying through the hushed silence, "would you like to press charges? You've got plenty of witnesses here. Assault, destruction of property, any one of these will stick." Every patron watched Elena, waiting. Her brown eyes held the same quiet focus they always did, but there was no mistaking the authority in her presence. She considered the sheriff's offer for a long moment, then shook her head slowly. "No need, Sheriff," she said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried like a rifle crack in the quiet bar. "I think Mr. Jackson and his friends were just leaving. And they won't be back." She shifted her gaze to Viper, who swallowed hard. "Will you, Mr. Jackson?" The threat was subtle but unmistakable. Viper's shaved head bobbed rapidly, his expression a mix of shame and desperation. "No, ma'am. We won't be back. In fact, we'll make sure everyone knows Murphy's is off limits. Completely off limits." Elena's gaze narrowed. "And the other establishments you've been threatening?" Her tone suggested it wasn't a question. We'll reconsider our business model," Viper stammered, his words tripping over each other. Then her voice cracked out like a drill instructor on a live range. "Kneel." The command snapped through the room like a whip. Viper didn't even process it. His body moved before his brain caught up, and suddenly the towering biker boss was on his knees on the sticky bar floor, staring up at a woman half his size. His crew shifted uneasily, but none of them dared move. "Ma'am," he whispered, the title slipping out without thought, his eyes wide and terrified. "You assaulted me. You destroyed property. You threatened my workplace and my colleagues," Elena said, her tone calm, almost conversational. "In some parts of the world I've operated in, you'd already be dead. But we do things differently here." Her dark eyes locked on his. "So you're going to apologize properly. Then you're going to leave. And you're going to spread the word that this entire county is under the protection of Marines who've seen scarier things than you on our easiest days." The apology came out broken, stuttering, but sincere enough that no one doubted its truth. He said it loud enough for the room to hear, loud enough that every Desert Viper standing behind him had no choice but to absorb the humiliation of their leader kneeling in surrender before a woman they had dismissed as ordinary. When Elena gave a single nod, Viper scrambled to his feet, desperate to escape the spotlight of her authority. He moved to the door without another word, his men trailing after him like whipped dogs. At the threshold, he hesitated, turning back one last time. His voice cracked with something that might have been respect, or perhaps confusion. "Can I ask, why hide it? Why pretend to be just a server?" For the first time that night, Elena's expression softened. "Because, Mr. Jackson, real warriors don't need to advertise. We don't wear our strength on the outside. We carry it quietly, and we use it only when necessary." Her jaw tightened, her voice quiet. "I came here for peace. To serve coffee. To wipe tables. To remember what it felt like to be normal. You took that from me tonight." The bikers left without another word, their motorcycles roaring into the night with notably less swagger than when they had arrived. Through the windows, the bar's patrons watched their taillights vanish into darkness. Everyone knew instinctively they would not be back. The silence that followed was heavy, reverent. Then Colonel Harrison, who had been sitting in the corner booth, finally spoke. His deep, gravelly voice broke the stillness with the weight of authority. "Gunny," he said carefully, "if you don't mind me asking, what are you doing here? With your record, you could be doing anything. Private security, law enforcement, teaching at Quantico." Elena bent, picked up her torn shirt from the floor, and folded it with the same precision she had once folded field maps and combat gear. "With respect, sir," she said, her voice low, "I've done my time being extraordinary. I was the tip of the spear. First one through the door. Last one out. I've got 47 confirmed kills and probably twice that unconfirmed. I've got a box full of medals in a storage unit and nightmares that wake me at 0300 every night." She walked behind the bar, pulled out a spare Murphy's Roadhouse shirt, and slipped it on with the same economy of motion she had used to reload rifles under fire. "I came here because nobody knew who I was. Because I could pour coffee for construction workers and not have them thank me for my service with that look in their eyes." She met Harrison's gaze steadily. "You know the one, sir. Equal parts awe, pity, and fear." From the back, Maria Santos, one of the servers, spoke softly. "But they ran you out, Elena. Those bikers took your piece." Elena shook her head firmly as she buttoned the clean shirt. "No. They reminded me of something I'd almost forgotten. That piece isn't something you hide to find. It's something you create by standing your ground." Jake, the young bartender who had remained frozen behind the bar throughout the standoff, finally found his voice. "Elena, I had no idea. 6 months we've worked together and I never—" "That was the point, Jake." She gave him the first genuine smile anyone had seen from her. "I didn't want to be Gunnery Sergeant Rodriguez, Force Recon Marine. I wanted to be Elena, the woman who makes sure your coffee is fresh and your tables are clean." "But you're a hero," someone called out from the back. Elena's smile faded. "No. Williams and Chen were heroes. They died protecting civilians. I'm just someone who was too stubborn to die and too damaged to do anything else but survive." Colonel Harrison rose, his movements deliberate. He approached the bar with the gravity of a man who had seen too much war to ever treat another veteran lightly. "Gunny," he said, his voice rough, "I know we don't know each other well. But I want you to know what you did in Fallujah. Holding that position, protecting those kids, Williams and Chen didn't die for nothing. 37 children made it out because of what you 3 did." Elena's hands stilled on the bar towel she had been folding. Her voice was steady, but quiet. 38, sir. One more was born in the evac chopper. Her mother named her Elena." The room fell into reverent silence. Patrons, soldiers, veterans, civilians, absorbed the weight of that revelation. Here was a woman who had literally given her body as a shield for innocence, who had bled and burned and buried friends. And she had chosen to disappear into anonymity, content to serve beer and wipe tables. "So what now?" Jake asked finally. "Everyone's going to know. Word's going to spread. You can't go back to being invisible." Elena resumed her duties, collecting empty glasses, wiping down tables as if nothing extraordinary had happened. "Then I guess I'll have to be visible. But on my terms." Over the next hour, the bar slowly returned to something resembling normal. Conversations resumed. Drinks were ordered. The jukebox played its usual mix of classic rock and country. But something had shifted in the air. Veterans who had been nursing silent pain began speaking to one another, sharing stories they had never told. Elena's revelation had somehow given permission to be seen, to be understood. Sheriff Bradley approached her while she delivered a round to construction workers. "Elena, I want to apologize. I should have intervened sooner. I saw the signs, the way you move, the way you observe, but I didn't put it together." "Nothing to apologize for, Sheriff," Elena said evenly. "You did exactly what you should have done. You tried to de-escalate." She paused, then added quietly, "Army, right? Iraq. He blinked. 2 tours. Infantry. Nothing special. Just a grunt doing his job. Every soldier is special, Sheriff, Elena said firmly. Everyone who stands when others won't, who goes where others fear to go. Don't diminish your service. As the night wore on, Elena fielded questions from curious patrons with the same precision she showed in serving drinks. Yes, she had been in force recon. No, she couldn't talk about most missions. Yes, the scars hurt when it rained. No, she didn't regret her service, just some of the things it had required. Around 11 p.m., a young woman approached. She couldn't have been more than 22, with the lean build of a runner and the 1,000-yard stare Elena recognized all too well. "Ma'am," the girl said quietly, "I'm Lance Corporal Sarah Webb. Just back from Afghanistan. I heard what happened. What you said about not being able to go back to normal." Her voice faltered. "How do you do it? How do you come back and just function?" Elena set down her tray, giving the young Marine her full attention. "You don't come back, Lance Corporal. Not really. The person who left doesn't exist anymore. You build a new person from the pieces that survived. And you find a new mission." She gestured around the bar. "This is mine. Serving people. Creating a place where veterans don't have to explain themselves, where civilians learn we're not broken, just different. Where someone like you can ask someone like me how to survive, and get an honest answer. Which is this, one day at a time, one table at a time, one act of service at a time." Sarah's eyes brimmed with tears, but her posture straightened. "The skills that made us Marines don't go away," Elena continued. "Attention to detail. Dedication to mission. Protecting others. We just have to find new ways to use them." By closing time, only Elena and Jake remained, cleaning up in silence. Finally, he blurted, "Do you regret it? Having your cover blown?" Elena turned chairs upside down for mopping, considering. "You know what? No. I've been hiding for 3 years, pretending that part of me didn't exist. But it does. It's as much a part of me as my hands or my eyes. Maybe it's time to stop running." "Will you stay at Murphy's?" Jake asked quietly. She glanced around the bar, the tables, the walls. "Where else would I go? This is my post now. And Marines don't abandon their posts." The next morning, Elena arrived to find Murphy's parking lot full. Veterans from 3 counties had gathered, drawn by the story of the Force Recon Marine who had faced down a biker gang with nothing but quiet authority. But Elena didn't make a spectacle. She tied on her apron, made fresh coffee, and began taking orders. When people thanked her for her service, she accepted graciously but turned the conversation back to their stories. Murphy himself pulled her aside during the lunch rush. "Elena, I heard what happened. If you need time off, or if you want to quit—" "All due respect, Mr. Murphy," Elena interrupted gently, "but I've got tables to serve. Besides," she added with a wry smile, "I think business is about to pick up. Every veteran in Southern California is going to want to come to the place where a Force Recon Marine tends bar." She was right. Within weeks, Murphy's Roadhouse transformed. Veterans' photos and memorabilia decorated the walls. A small military history library appeared in one corner. Tuesday nights became Veterans' Night. The bar was no longer just a roadside stop, it was a sanctuary. And Elena changed too. She still wore her server's uniform, still cleaned with military precision, but she no longer tried to shrink. She moved with the quiet confidence of someone who had nothing left to prove and nothing left to hide. 3 months later, a package arrived. Inside was a purple heart polished to a mirror shine. A note read, "Gunny Rodriguez, you left this at Leatherneck. Thought you might want it back. Corpsman Santos." Elena held the medal for a long time before walking to the wall of memorabilia. She hung it carefully beside a photo of 3 Marines in front of a bullet-riddled schoolhouse. The caption, "Heroes of Fallujah, LCPL Williams, PFC Chen, Gunny Rodriguez." Jake joined her. "I've been thinking about enlisting," he admitted. "Because of you. Because of what you represent." "Those are good reasons," Elena said. "But make sure you're doing it for you. The Corps takes everything and asks for more. Be sure you're willing to pay that price. Were you? Jake asked softly. Elena's hand moved unconsciously to her dog tags. Every damn day. And I'd do it again. But that's me. You need to find your own answer. Later, catching her reflection in the bar mirror, Elena saw not the naive 18-year-old who enlisted, nor the broken veteran who had tried to disappear. She saw something new, someone forged in service, tempered in survival, and now serving again in peace. Warriors don't need recognition. They serve. That had become her motto. Not with a rifle, but with a coffee pot. Not in combat, but in a roadside bar. Still serving. Still protecting. Semper Fidelis. Always faithful, to the core, to her brothers, to her new mission. And Murphy's Roadhouse would never be the same.